Welcome, everybody, to this brand new episode where we discuss Twin Peaks, but we're not discussing an episode. We're done watching the first run of Twin Peaks, season 1 and 2. We'll get into the return later, but in this episode, we're going to be talking about shows that kind of give us the same vibe as Twin Peaks. And the first one we're looking at here, I know my guys can't see it, and maybe you guys have heard of it, but a show called Northern Exposure.
Yeah, heard of it.
Yep,
Okay.
heard of it.
It's very much a '90s show. Takes place in Alaska, where there's a lot of
Just,
native
I think it
people
just
that
got
live
on
there.
streaming recently. Well.
But the show, is more of a lighthearted take on like a small town vibe, but it definitely has that kind of like kitsch to it where there's definitely a big focus on Native American, like wood, like log cabins and things like that. Kind of cold atmosphere, sort of like Twin Peaks. A cast of characters that's varied, with everybody having their own kind of quirk, but it kind of works together as like this big community unit that you can kind of tell, like, oh, there's the doctor, oh, here's the local weirdo, here's the like the log lady analog or something. Have any of you seen it?
Way back when it was on initially, I definitely saw it, but not since.
Well, maybe the next one.
What was it on?
CBS when it first aired.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember.
Way back in the 90s.
Next one, you guys might have seen. I'm not particularly sure if you have, but Donald Glover's Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Seen
sort
some
of
of
a newer kind of take on what's influenced, stuff maybe nowadays that people are like, oh, what should I kind of emulate, or what kind of like I take inspiration from, and Donald Glover has said in interviews, I think, especially about like Atlanta and his creative methods and the surrealism behind it. He's like, I want it to be Twin Peaks, but with rappers, or like, with that culture, with that vibe.
Right.
So a lot of surreal things happen to this individual, like these friends in this group. And some of it's explained, but some of it's really bizarre that like it comes and goes, that you just don't understand why it's happening. It just kind of throws you into that, like, oh, was this real, or is this in their head, or like what does this mean in the overall story of this character? Like, is he losing his mind, or is this just how he interprets interactions with certain individuals or something? And there's definitely characters that come through the show that remind me of like the giant, the giant that appears in front of Dale. Like, there's characters like that just pop in, but it's definitely got the same vibes in the surreal, like Twin Peaks. Definitely not as murder heavy or demons coming out. It's just kind of the surreal aspect of things that are unexplained or bizarre.
I did think of something actually. A show that it has had many different aspects through its different seasons. The show Fargo,
Good one, huh?
ironically, but like specifically season 3. Like there's like I said, like pretty much all seasons. Maybe not 5 so much, but definitely 1, 2, 3. What was 4? Was 4 the one with Chris Rock?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe not 4. I haven't seen 5, but 1, 2, and 3 definitely all have it. And 3 specifically, there is a couple things that happen that are very, very like, I don't know, like Red Room-esque.
Okay.
Have you guys seen it? The one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Ewan McGregor and
No.
David Thewlis.
Yep. Where he's like, David Thewlis is like he has bulimia and he always barfs after everything.
Yeah, he plays a very, very like ethereal feeling character, but also like the scene where Mary Elizabeth Winstead kind of like is going through this certain very harrowing experience, and she just stumbles upon this bowling alley and goes inside, and there's Ray Wise, and she just sits down and has a chat
Oh,
with
there
Ray
you
Wise
go.
for like 10-15 minutes, and he gives her a kitten, and then she leaves, and she's like, oh yeah, this kitten has my like dead lover's soul inside of it. And you're like, oh,
Yep, I do remember that scene, and I remember
yeah.
Ray Wise being like that kind of stranger. Like, if you remember, that bowling alley is very similar to the Big Lebowski bowling alley.
Yeah, very, very
It's got
like
the same
same
like
exact vibe.
same neon lights even on the outside of it.
I mean, with it being the Coen brothers, it could have been,
Well, that's the thing.
Right.
A
but
lot
but
to
it
do with
wasn't
Fargo
like,
is that they like to derive other things from, like in season 2 where they go back in like the 70s or something. There's a brief mention of like one of the sheriffs like stumbling upon a saucer in the sky, and
Yeah.
that was a direct reference to The Man Who Wasn't There with Billy Bob Thornton. And Billy Bob was in a Coen Brothers movie. It was kind of like a not really well known one, but one that I always go back to because there's some surrealist stuff that happens in
hmm,
that happened in Fargo. I was like, oh, that's very reminiscent. And Ray Wise in this one reminds me of um, Sam Elliott, or what? Yeah, is it Sam Elliott? In The Stranger in Big Lebowski, was
oh
like, hey, dude,
yeah, yeah, just somebody that like talks to you and seems to know certain things about you
you gotta
without
swear so
being,
much, dude.
yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about?
But and also the aspect of like a small town um feel to it, very like a lot of little touches that make it feel, small community, just because of the nature of the show and where it takes place a lot of times.
Perfect. And we're just gonna jump into my next one is Fringe. I'm gonna
Yes.
talk about
Let's go.
Bracho. You've seen Fringe, right?
Yeah, love Fringe.
Spring.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about some connections with
Well,
Twin
it's a
Peaks.
lot to do with the surrealist elements, but also um, it's part of a lineage that I always kind of credit with kind of fully being birthed out of X-Files,
We'll get
which
to
I
that too.
also kind of put on there too. But it's kind of in that vein where you'll have like a not necessarily monster of the week, but like case of the week or whatever thing. But there's a surrealist element. There's a it deals with like the multiverse as well. Like um so it gets kind of weird and kind of heady with that stuff. And yeah, I don't know, that was definitely one that was on my list of being kind of part of this lineage. Um and I don't know, but do you have any better way of explaining from your
Well, it's like an agency, like
yeah.
for the Fringe agency that they're investigators of these weird phenomenon, things like that.
Yeah.
It
And I
reminds
think
me a
like
lot of
yeah,
how
is
Dale
it through
conducts
the
his
FBI
investigations.
too, right?
Yeah,
The government. Yeah, and then it's involving this professor at a college, um, and his um, expertise or whatever in this kind of weird um, stuff, and his son, who is also very intelligent but very rift with his father, and then like all this other stuff, played by Joshua Jackson
yeah.
of Mighty
Oh
Ducks
yeah,
fame.
Charlie,
yeah.
Um, yep.
Charlie
And then the
Conway.
dad has, you find out what and why certain things are, but like the dad has kind of mental issues too. Um, but yeah, and it all builds to like cool like multiverse stuff and like some kind of hard sci-fi stuff, which is fun.
Will.
And yeah, that brings me
Definitely.
to, I mean, if you're done talking about it,
Mhm.
that brings me to one that came around probably a little bit before Fringe, but also a very influential show, Lost.
Mm-hmm.
Lost was very
Yep.
big at, giving you those
Lost was-
mysteries and like the mysteries that keep uncovering throughout the show, kind of like
mystery
Twin
box
Peaks,
stuff. Yeah.
but also giving you like this otherworldly, like is this a different realm that they're in? Like it gives you these questions that you're hanging on, like that's what hooks you.
Yeah.
And that's what hooks you with like Twin Peaks is like when they first introduced like the waiting room for like the Black Lodge, and you're just like looking at this random room that looks so out of place and so bizarre. There's like bizarre things that happen in Lost, and like the interconnectivity of like these characters and what like the main message of this like show is. Like it hooks you. Like those types of things keep you watching.
We should note that Lost and Fringe are both J.J. Abrams joints.
Yeah, very true.
Also,
Lost was a very big, like one of the. It was like my Twin Peaks in a weird way, because I wasn't like invested in Twin Peaks as it was airing, because I wasn't born, probably, or no, I was, but I was probably too young
You're a
to
little
be
boy.
watching
just
something like that.
Boy.
But yeah, like when I grew up and then I started watching stuff like Lost, I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of my Twin Peaks, because there was like mystery, intrigue, interesting characters that all have their like cool gimmick and interactions and things like that. Great cliffhangers that would happen and things like that, and it was a cultural phenomenon. Like people would speculate on it, probably like how they did with Twin Peaks. They would speculate on episodes, like, what does this mean? And what do you think that is? And they would try to solve the puzzle before the next episode, right? I could imagine that was the same discussions that were going on when Twin Peaks was airing. And that brings us to The Leftovers. And I've talked about this before.
Yes, you have.
And it's definitely a show that I would want you guys to watch at some point. This one more so has, it's a Damon Lindelof, so like Lost.
Yeah.
It's written by Damon and I think produced by Damon Lindelof, and he loves these mystery box things and tying everything into like supernatural or biblical like ramifications or biblical kind of themes. And The Leftovers is one of those shows that I was completely in for. Like it was so up my alley. Like the first 2 seasons are, in my opinion, like just great television. And it doesn't necessarily have like the kooky cast of characters, but it has characters that dip into the realm of the supernatural, because a big event happens, just like in Twin Peaks. A major cataclysmic event happens to this town and to the world, at least for the Leftovers' sake. But it affects this. We're watching this, how it affects this one town and this one individual's family kind of break apart. And you're watching all these different people that are in his family kind of interact with the world now that this big event happened. And you don't get a lot of answers. You get more questions, but you like accept the mystery. This event happened. You can't explain it, but it tickles that supernatural urge that Twin Peaks does, where the stuff that I really connect with is like the Black Lodge things and the ideas that Major Briggs has with fear and love and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is featured in Leftovers, and great cast of characters. One of them is a David Lynch alum, Justin Theroux. He's also in Mulholland Drive, which is a David Lynch film. And I mean, he probably has some stuff to say about The Leftovers, even saying like, oh yeah, it's very Lynchian, very, you got to read between the lines, or like there's some metatextual message somewhere deep in there. But very good show. I enjoy watching it. Season 3 didn't hit as hard as the first two seasons for me. Season 2 was probably like one of my favorite shows, or one of my favorite runs that the show had. But yeah, definitely a very good watch. We're going to go to one that I don't really know a whole lot about, but I know a lot of people address this film or this show, Wayward Pines. It was a show on Fox.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Okay, it's with Matt Dillon, and he's like a detective or an agent of the FBI that goes to this place called Wayward Pines, Idaho, or something like that, investigating another small town. Everybody in this town is a suspect or has that kind of air about them, like oh, they could have done it. Oh, this person has a motive to do this, or blah blah blah. Like, I don't know if there was a lot of that in Twin Peaks. Like, at first maybe, like, oh, you go to the strange town and you're meeting all these people. At one point I was like, oh man, it could be that person, but then quickly I was just like, oh no, they're just weird. They're just quirky and weird. They don't have any reason to kill Laura Palmer. Like, I don't think the log lady had motivation to do that, or like even people at the diner like would have done anything like that, like, or Bobby or James. Like, I was thinking maybe James would have been a great one because they did bring him in for questioning, him and Bobby. But it's quickly like that idea that they could have done it was quickly thrown out because you get more into like the Leo Johnson connection and stuff like that. But in this show, Wayward Pines is like everybody seems like they have something to hide, and maybe that's the hook of the show is like maybe they have a motivation. They totally could have done it. And it's produced by M. Night Shyamalan, so maybe he had some kind of, he has that with him. He likes the twists.
There's definitely some peaks all up in him.
Yeah, he's got some Peaks vibes, and he likes to delve in the twists of things. And now we're gonna get into some ones that you guys definitely have seen. True Detective.
You go.
Yep.
Season 1 in particular has to deal with state sheriffs, detectives, uncovering this inciting incident of a dead girl, right? And weird markings that happened on her. And also there's, clues that were on Laura Palmer, like the under the fingernail letters and things like that. This one's more hard-boiled, I would say, than Twin Peaks. It doesn't have a lot of dips into the supernatural. It does, with one of the main characters being very introspective, I guess. Not as quirky and bubbly as Dale Cooper, being like,
No, yeah.
I want some pie and some coffee and hot, like Matthew McConaughey as Rustin Cole is more like, give me some cigarettes and cocaine.
I like him. I like Rust in the interrogation, or like in the interview room, where he's just like, "You get me a 6-pack of beer." It's just so like, strung out and like
strung out, and not like you would never imagine Dale Cooper going up to an individual and saying, "If you ever get the chance to kill yourself, you should." Like, because that's straight up McConaughey would say that to somebody. Like, it's like, I don't sleep anymore, I just dream. That's something kind of you could see Cooper saying, right? Like, Cooper would say something like that, because he did delve into the dream theories of stuff.
Inside a dream.
Time is a flat circle.
That's literally what he does say. So
there's maybe a little bit of a Cooper in Rust Cole, but it is its own thing.
Well, I would say that yes, absolutely, because they are the like law enforcement person who is willing to go to all kinds of lengths to investigate the things that they feel they need to, and that is not only in the like physical realm. They're willing to investigate spiritual aspects, like whatever they have to do. They're willing to step across lines. They're willing to go where other people don't go to find the clues. Not only do they both like go to the spiritual places and stuff, they go to very dark places. They see very like horrific and dark things in their lines of work.
Yep.
So that exposure to like the darkness probably helps them in their search for truth.
And what really brought True Detective to the forefront of my mind when I think of Twin Peaks is that, what Heather Graham, Annie, had to say about being the warriors, like the spiritual warrior or mystic warrior. Is that the word she called it?
Oh yeah,
We all need to be a mystic warrior or something like the.
something like
Yeah.
that, man.
We're all mystical warriors.
That is definitely what Rust and Marty Hart are trying to be, is like these warriors for good,
Mystic
and
warrior.
they're going down those paths, like you said, like that one episode where Rust jumps in with like the bikers and tries to do that deal in that really bad part of town, and he's going to lengths to like, I gotta look the part, so I have to take like some cocaine out of the evidence locker, and I gotta do some of it so they can tell that I'm kind of strung out on some substance, so they don't think I'm a narc. I'm not gonna, I'm actually going undercover and playing the part. And so he goes to those deep, horrible places just to get the answers he's looking for. And then we're gonna get into one that's maybe newer, because I'm gonna leave X-Files for our last one, because X-Files is a no-brainer, especially with some of the cast, making their return. But if you guys haven't seen Severance, that is also very Twin Peaksy.
I am
I
aware.
have not.
Nope, me either.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Because that's Apple Plus, right? Apple
Yeah.
TV Plus.
Yes, and it's only had
I
one
didn't spend
season.
no money on Apple.
But yeah, okay. Severance definitely has some Twin Peaks vibes. It takes, I don't know if I can give a whole lot. Essentially, the story is that you can sever your mind. So whenever you go to work, you're a completely different person. But when you leave work after those 8 hours, you become yourself, like the self as you know yourself. So imagine you go to work and you turn your brain off, but your brain keeps acting as if it was, puppeting your body. So you'll never remember the person that is the person that's at work. And that's kind of what this show is these people that are either, living a trauma or don't want to be reminded of a certain traumatic event that happened to them. They just want to go throughout their day, make their money, and then come back and not have to deal with the monotony of going to work. But what happens when these people are at work, that's where the drama happens, is that some people want to figure out why they're there, why they're at this specific job, why are they doing this, because this is their reality. They don't know what the world is like outside of those walls that they're in for those 8 hours. They don't know that they're a father or a girlfriend or a widower or anything. They don't know who they really are. So you're wanting them to figure out who they really are, even though after they leave work, you know who they are, and you care about them when they're outside of work too, but they're a completely different person. And so I think that's kind of the fun part of connecting it to Twin Peaks a little bit, is that you have doppelgangers. And
Right.
in Twin Peaks, there's another version of you that's, incepted in this other realm that can either come to the forefront and manipulate you or puppet you or just, possess you, like in, Leland's case. It wasn't a doppelganger, but it was somebody else puppeting him for a while to do
Right.
really horrible things. It reminds me a lot of like the randomness that would happen. Like, oh, definitely a Twin Peaks kind of shot there where somebody did something really bizarre, very
Right.
Lynchian kind of like style to it. Like, oh, I want to shoot this guy doing a random dance. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, perfect.
And there's like random dances that happen in this show. Like, oh, okay. just a weird scene where they just have a dance party. It's got a great cast of actors and characters. It's got some Christopher Walken in there. It's got some Adam Scott and John Turturro.
Oh, John Turturro. I like John Turturro.
I love the shirts, dude.
John Totoro. Yeah, he's great.
Turturini.
My neighbor Totoro.
That'd be amazing.
Now,
Very nice.
we're going to talk about the X-Files.
Fagula, bagula.
So, when was the last time you guys watched the X-Files?
It's been a couple of years. I mean, it's been a few years, you know.
Yeah.
I've never watched the entire series. I think I got to like season 7 or something, and then I fell off.
Okay.
Interesting.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't there, but
This is more of like a anthology or episodic. It's not primarily like a sequence of like there's a big question that needs to be answered. It's like
No.
it's kind of like a question is asked at the beginning of the episode and some kind of semblance of an answer happens at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it's a monster of the week, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's episodic with connective tissue for an overall story. But you definitely, it's like basically like take Twin Peaks and make it a bite size.
Yeah. Yeah, I could say that.
Episode.
You definitely get that vibe.
To a degree.
And maybe they
Obviously,
touched on some of that stuff. And I think in one that I remember was like when X-Files did their version of Cops.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
one that stands out as like one of my favorite episodes of the X-Files because like Mulder and Scully were just like tagging along for this cop ride along. And
Yep.
it seems like it was they tried to shoot it in like a one shot in some parts.
Yeah.
Where like the monster of the week was just a monster that tried to like put fear in people, and that one kind of reminded me of like the fear that looms over Twin Peaks, right? And
Right.
so that was like what's terrorizing this Cops episode was like this boogeyman or like this fear creature that would latch itself onto different people as they would go investigate different people's houses and stuff, or incidents that cops would get calls on. And we have Duchovny as Dennis or Denise,
Denise. Yep.
sticking with the FBI all the way till becoming Agent Fox Mulder,
Yep.
Had so many different lives in the FBI.
What's funny too is in a comic book, X-Files, I think is X-Files Year Zero, maybe? Or X-Files Zero. Someone's Zero in the title. There's a scene where I think Mulder and Scully are in like a diner.
Oh.
And he mentions, he does say like damn fine cup of coffee or whatever, and says that he's got a buddy up in the Pacific Northwest or something.
Oh.
Just insinuating that X-Files and Twin Peaks are in the same universe. I mean, what X-Files was 94? Is that when X-Files starts? But yeah, they had to have been at least, some sort of influence from Twin Peaks in there. And then X-Files itself births a whole, genre as well. Some bearing resemblance to Twin Peaks, like Fringe, is definitely from the X-Files line of birthing there, but also stuff like Supernatural too is very X-Files. It's Monster of the Week. I think it's done by somebody who was a writer or producer on X-Files as well, Eric Kripke. But yeah, it that I wouldn't say Supernatural has anything in common with Twin Peaks, but I'm just saying that comes from that line of that hereditary line of the Monster of the Week, building up a central core thing and whatever, and from somebody who worked on Files. So,
And I was contemplating putting Supernatural in there. It's like just because it's
Yeah.
a Monster of the Week, kind of like
Yeah, it's part
X-Files.
of that
Just,
bloodline.
yeah, there's connective tissue
So
there
it
with
doesn't
X-Files
share.
anyway.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. There's not a direct parallel to Twin Peaks, but there's a direct line as far as the heritage goes.
Now we'll get into some just honorable mentions. And one thing that I wanted to discuss is Deadly Premonition, the video game,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, dude.
basically Twin Peaks, the video game.
Yeah.
Weird stuff happens, weird dialogue happens. I mean, the game is just calling it
Straight
Twin
up.
Peaks.
Yeah.
Not as well written, probably, as Twin Peaks, and I'll say
No,
that
no.
definitively, but
Probably poorly translated.
poorly
also, I'm
translated.
guessing.
But it's got diners, it's got a quirky cast of
Drive-ins, dives.
yeah, diners, drive-ins, dives, Guy Fieri. It's got Dale Coopers, it's got FBI agents, it's got a small town, it's got murder, it's got ghosts, it's got so many.
Supernatural.
Mega.
scenarios there.
Have you guys
That's
played that
wild.
game, Deadly Premonition?
I've watched Funhouse playthroughs.
So
love
yeah,
it.
you have a good idea of like the style.
Yeah.
Yeah, the small town characters that you have to talk, like what's their motivation and things like that. You have to do some investigating and go into a random spirit world realm kind of thing and deal with the craziness that happens there. It's just a campy, weird game, I would say.
Right.
Heavily inspired. Another one is Alan Wake.
A world is quick.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Alan Wake, the new one recently came out, and that one definitely. I haven't played the new one, but I remember playing the Xbox 360 one a long time
the
ago,
first one.
and I played a lot of Control, which is connected to
Yep.
to Alan Wake, and how Sam Lake is like the writer or producer
Yep.
of these, who's also the face for Max Payne, like the first Max Paynes.
Yep.
So yeah, this has a lot of same vibes as Twin Peaks. Small town,
Mhm.
wooded areas. You're in the mountains. There's a lot of rain, trees.
Weird supernatural stuff that you can't quite explain. With,
Right.
like I said, he's trapped in some other dimension thing in the new one too. So, kind of Black Lodgy, seed weird shit. Yeah, a lot of that in there too.
But yeah, that's our discussion on that. So we'll be back with more kind of tangentially connected Twin Peaks related content, along with some other short form stuff before we jump back into Fire Walk with Me. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And if you like this video, hit that like button or leave comments if we missed a show or movies. Movies also. Any and all. Leave them in the comments below and we'll make sure to address them in a future video probably. So thank you.